Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm going to be joined by Brady Stoeltzing. Brady is our head of operations at Bateman Collective and has a ton of experience that has helped him to understand what operations level you need for what point you're in your business. We're going to talk about different softwares and tools. We're going to talk about ways to implement systems and processes within your company. And we're going to talk about the kind of relationship we have, which is something we call a visionary integrator relationship, how that works, and how you can both grow the company and maintain efficiency at the same time. How you doing today, Brady?
Doing good. I'm just happy to be here in person.
Yes, happy to have you here in person as well. Tell everybody where you live usually.
I live in Oregon. Yeah, so I lived in Utah up until last summer, and my wife and I have been in Oregon for the last almost a year now.
Yeah, and Southern Oregon, right by the coast,
Southern
right?
Oregon, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yep, super beautiful. I know you have some land right near the coast there, a little tiny house on the
That's
land.
right. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So Brady's our unusual person on the team that doesn't actually live here and lives in his sandals on the Southern Oregon coast.
Most people just see me on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
fair enough. So that's why I'm super excited to have you here today. We were just doing some quarterly planning over the last couple of days.
That's right.
We had Sharper come out and help us. It was pretty awesome. So you are, how do I describe this? If I died tomorrow, then I don't think anything around here would skip a beat. And you're the reason that would be true. Of course, everybody's the reason that would be true because they have to all do their jobs.
No questions.
You're the thing that holds it all together. And I'm really grateful that it's just not me that holds it together. So I'm excited to talk about that relationship and everything. The interesting thing is I don't know if any of our clients know you. I don't know if any of our partners know you. You're kind of the behind the scenes guy that makes this happen. And really the better side of the partnership that you and I have together. So for everybody listening, Brady is an operations genius, understands systems, understands people, accountability, all those things that kind of make a business work. And I'm super excited to dive into all that stuff today. Any comments before we jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me tons of credit and not giving yourself any. I mean, you're the mastermind behind all of this and the reason why I'm able to be working here. But the relationship between us has been really interesting as it's developed over, the year and a half that I've been here, starting with getting systems in place and getting some efficiency and management in place for, the different type of work and starting to scale that. And then moving into management of people and that kind of stuff and taking more and more off your plate so you can not work until 10 p.m. every night. So I'm happy that you're able to have more of a family life, which is definitely a good thing.
Oh, and if you could do it better, then I'd say go ahead. Right? Let's talk a little bit about your background because I think that'll set the stage for some of the value that you're going to add today. So tell me, how'd you get here and what were you doing before this?
Yeah, sure. So I started out, went to BYU, studied advertising, was working in digital marketing at the same time. For an agency here in Utah as well. And they were starting a sister company, which was, it was like a link building company. And it was, just barely starting when I got in there.
Yeah, and if I could add some context, because we've talked about this before, but just to add some color to this. There's a few marketing channels that we focus on as a company. This can be SEO, PPC, Facebook ads.
Correct.
SEO, one discipline, arguably one of the most important disciplines within it is something called link building.
Right.
It's how do you get links from other websites to yours. Right. Google wants it to happen naturally. It doesn't in this industry. In some industries, it does a little bit more than others.
Sure.
Sometimes you need a little bit of help, but you got to keep it within their policies.
Exactly.
You got to keep it on budget, et cetera. So that's kind of what you're talking about. Like
exactly.
Your job was creating these backlinks.
Yeah. So, and backlinks, essentially, it's like a credibility score from another site. It's somebody saying, hey, I endorse this website. You should go check them out. They have good content. Here's, why I think they have good content. And you have a keyword that's linked within that. And so that's where keyword research comes into play, making sure that you're targeting the right things so that, when you start to search on Google, you show up for the right things. So I was working in that space and it was a new agency, essentially, sister company housed under another. And we were just essentially getting started with processes and systems and making sure that things were done, in a way that we could grow and scale a team. And so I was, working within that team, started to find ways that could uh, get things done faster, better, more efficiently, and was just kind of proactive as to getting those in place, and was able to grow within that company, and then eventually left there, tried to figure out what I wanted to do next, and ended up starting my own agency. And I did that for a year, built out all the systems and processes, and got it all in place and ready to scale. And lots of interesting dynamics about the relationship that I had with my partner there, but ended up moving on and met Brandon, and he had this amazing vision of his agency that, you've already started, and you brought me into essentially your vision for solving data sparsity, how you're already doing it with real estate, and the future possibility of doing that long term, large scale. And I was like, yeah, I'm all in. I mean, I was bought off on you and everything that you had going on. So I was like, yeah, I want to be a part of your team, because what I learned from my last experience was that partnering with the right person is essential. And we clicked, and you were really good at digging into what drives me and what I'm interested in. And so that's kind of how everything started here. And then jumped in first day, gave me a huge list of things that could be set up and fixed and implemented, and we've been hitting it hard ever since.
Yeah. It's I still remember that interview process, and let this be a lesson to everyone that you have to kind of keep your eyes like wide open throughout interviewing. Because Brady actually applied to be an account manager here, someone who does strategy and works with our clients, which, I mean, I believe that you'd be good at anything you put your mind to. I believe you would also burn out in that kind of role and would not be interested. Yeah. And I wasn't even hiring someone for operations at that time. But the more I talked to you, the more I realized this guy's a genius. And we really need someone like this here. So we actually created a job for you.
That's right.
Which I shortly thereafter learned is a job that we should have had for like years prior to that. And you ended up filling that role really well.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good caveat into what I think would be a good thing to dive into, right? Which is, at what point should you start to invest in scaling your operations and that side of your business, and how do you determine, it's the right time to start to grow and put money towards that? Like you said, once we started to dive into all that stuff, you realized, oh man, I definitely should have invested in this sooner. And so it's hard to know, when is the right time, how to know if it's worth the allocation of resources and all that stuff. So.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And it sounds like you've had two experiences kind of on either side of that, right? Like your experience with your own agency was that well, tell me about that experience, like the operations building there.
Yeah. So essentially it was creating systems and processes. So what I was doing was building out the infrastructure of something that could scale really fast. That was my goal. So I put in systems in place where, in a matter of days, I could hire 10 to 20 employees, get them all trained really easily, because we had everything listed out that you would need for training for every single process that we were doing. And I was ready to just, hit the ground running. And so that's what I was doing on my side of things. And where things kind of fell short was the partner relationship and getting sales in the door and moving the needle on that side. And so, that's what I was spending my time doing, making sure that we had the infrastructure in place, testing it with a small team initially to make sure that it was easy to implement and for somebody to pick up quickly and to learn and to apply. And then doing little iterations as we went to kind of hone in on what needed to be changed, where were there gaps in our processes. And that's all essential for making sure that, you have something in place that can be used for scale.
Yeah. So you had that experience where the operations kind of outpaced the company.
It did. Yeah, definitely.
And then you've had the experience here where kind of the sales outpaced the operations at the point when you first came into the company, right? So you've kind of seen both sides.
I have.
And then you had your experience before both of those where I know you were dialing in a lot of operational things. I remember you telling me about some of the stuff that you guys would do there to be more efficient. It's kind of insane. I don't think a lot of people think about this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Efficiency is something that... everybody wants to be as efficient as possible, but not a lot of people dive into how you can get to that point, right? So, jumping back into my SEO experience, we had the systems in place to build out links as efficiently as possible and grow a team. And one of the things that I was looking into specifically is how can we do more? How can we leverage each person to the maximum? And so this is probably going to sound crazy for most people, but I went, into the nitty gritty of, what can we do? Everybody's working on a laptop, right? And the work is done in spreadsheets and, in Google. And so my thought process was, okay, on a regular basis, we're switching between tabs. On a regular basis, we're scrolling around a page, and a lot of time is spent doing little things like that. If you're scrolling from one corner of the page up to one tab and clicking on the next one and then scrolling down to the same spot on the page, there's seconds every time you do that are lost. And when you're outreaching to websites, you're going through hundreds of websites a day. And so all of those seconds add up to minutes and hours and, weeks on the large scale. And so what I did was essentially figure out how can we do things as quickly as possible. So I made my whole team make their track pad speed all the way up to 10, which if you work on a laptop and your trackpad is slow, moving it from that to 10 is really overwhelming at first, but then your brain gets used to it really quickly. And that alone saved minutes of time per person per hour. And then shortcuts, like learning how to go from tab to tab without scrolling and clicking, just doing the shortcut on the keyboard saved, minutes of time per person. And so I was able to get each person to increase their capacity of how many links they could build in a day, in a week, in a month by, huge amounts just by doing those tiny incremental changes, which if you're thinking about it on the small scale, it's like that doesn't make a difference. But when you look at it more macro, you start to save tons of time and be way more efficient and profitable per person.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. So when we're thinking about this, obviously there's something like the speed of your trackpad that affects employee productivity.
Yes.
Right. And then there's other things that, a lot of people would say are more foundational.
Sure.
And you've overbuilt operations before.
Sure.
You've seen underbuilt operations.
Sure.
How does someone know what is the right sized operations for them? Things like, when do you hire an operations person? What kind of systems should you be using, and how much should you be investing into updating those systems or changing that or process mapping, all these things, right? Because I know in your previous experience, right, you invested so much into this stuff and then nothing happened. Right. But then in other experiences, you can have sales outpacing the operations, and then you're scaling an inefficient system,
right?
And that results in less productivity ultimately, and
right.
potentially some roadblocks for the business. So
yeah.
So what is the right formula for someone where they're at right now in their business?
That's a great question, and it's tricky, right? Because you think about when you're starting, it's usually a one-person operation. You're just trying to figure out what's going on. You're trying to survive. So survival mode at first is kind of what's needed to get something off the ground, and then you start to build a small team, and your vision at that point is, okay, I want to scale my operation to this point, right? You're probably not looking to, okay, I'm going to get to 10 million right now, right? Your focus is, okay, I want to have a team of 5. Right now it's just me. I want to have a team of 5. So at each point, as you scale your business, you need to have a vision of where you're going, and then build in the systems that reach that goal. So what I did in my last agency was I had the vision of 10 million, right? So I was like building out all of the operations for that, when I should have focused on, more efficiency now and leveraging more of my time towards something like sales, where, I was just heavily operationally focused. So it is tricky to know at what point you need to scale, but I think it all comes down to vision. And to making sure that you have a long-term game plan and you're aiming for that. Because if you don't have that vision, then everything is going to be focused on just today. You're always going to be in survival mode. And that's not going to be effective if you're trying to scale to, a certain size. So I think working back from where your goals are is a really great place to start.
Yeah, so let me see if I understand this properly. So let's just say we want to grow really quickly as a company. I guess what you're saying is you need to build out more robust operations more more quickly, right?
Correct.
And if we're looking to more maintain or something, then we don't have to invest quite as much there,
That's
which would be
correct.
the reason, I guess, that companies' margins generally compress as they're growing, because you have some of that upfront investment to make it possible for
Exactly.
you to fulfill on that growth over time.
Yep, no questions. Yeah, and there's always going to be some sort of operational cost up front as you're building something that's going to scale, because you're not going to have a team that's going to, be the full size of where you're headed, right? So you're going to be investing more in your systems, and there's going to be an upfront cost to that. But as you start to scale, that cost goes down, efficiency goes up, hiring people gets really quick, getting them through the system gets really fast, and then all of a sudden, all the gears are turning, and it gets really easy to just, throw some more fire into it, right?
Yes. So let's talk about some problems that people face if they underinvest in operations.
Sure.
What have you seen?
I mean, there's all sorts of problems.
Mhm.
If you underinvest in operations, let's say you have a small team, you don't have operations built out. What you're most likely doing is having regular meetings and communication with people where you're saying, hey, go do this, go do that, telling them what to do. They're very dependent on you. And so you're the bottleneck in the system, right? They can't work without you. So no operations means that, you are the operational system essentially. And then let's say, you have a slightly bigger team and you don't have a great communication structure in place. I mean, that's a huge one where I think a lot of companies miss the mark or drop the ball. Maybe they have email in place and that's how they send out all of their tasks, and they don't have a task management system. That could be one way to start to increase operational efficiency.
Or they have a task management system, but nobody uses it the same as anybody else. There's no accountability.
So there's
for those
procedure.
things.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're ever in a position where you feel like, I told this person to do this, but it didn't get done,
No questions.
operations loophole.
Exactly. Yeah, and part of scaling operations is there's always going to be little things like that you're finding. The important thing is that you're looking for them, you're finding them, and you're solving them, rather than doing a Band-Aid or a duct tape fix, which happens all the time in all sorts of businesses, right? We're looking for the fastest way to just move forward, and so we're like, okay, this will work for now. Well, that problem's going to come up again if you don't look for a long-term solution. And so let's do this now, but let's also create a game plan for how we can close this hole in our system and make sure that we don't have to encounter it again. So there's that dichotomy of fix it now and then get the long-term solution. And you kind of need to have both things in place to be able to move forward and be really effective and efficient. If you're only doing duct tape fixes, you will always be leaning on those as the problems keep getting encountered. So it's really important to have both.
Yeah, and I hope I'm not overstepping to say that probably like 90% of entrepreneurs are the Band-Aid fix.
No
people,
questions.
even if they don't think they are,
Yep.
right? I know that's me, right? I think this client has a problem right now. We need to fix this problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you view it so differently. You look
Mm-hmm.
and you say, we have an operations problem. We have a system problem.
Sure.
And what we need is not to fix this problem, although we need that too,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we need to find a way to fix all those problems forever.
Yes, exactly.
Which is such a different skill set. And I try to think that way, but the
Mm-hmm.
stuff I implement just doesn't work the same way that the stuff that you implement does. What's the difference between like a attempted long-term solution and one that's actually successful?
Yeah, so there's a few key factors to that. I think the first one is you need to have your what are we doing, right? So what's the end goal? And then the next thing you need to know is how are we going to do it? So the process for what exactly is going to happen. So end goal is we don't want to have this issue again, right? Duct tape fix, sure, that helps to get to the end goal, but then you always have a bottleneck in the system. So the procedure or the how is how you fix that, which is, either a new process or something to put in place to kind of close that gap. And then part of the procedure is how do we make sure that all of the employees or all the people that touch that procedure know what to do. So documentation is huge. And this is probably another place where I think people totally miss the mark. They've told somebody to do something and they're like, okay, I told them how to do it. They're good. They know exactly how to do it. I don't have to think about it anymore.
That's what I do.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to fall into that mistake of, I told somebody it's off my plate, I've delegated. But delegation is a tricky thing, right? You need to show them how it works, and you need to have a place where they can reference so that if they have questions, they can lean on that documentation. And then once they understand that, then obviously making sure that they've done it right. So having some sort of auditing process to ensure that, okay, I'm confident now that they can totally handle this. And then from there, it's just managing efficiency. We have the process, we have the documentation, it's been audited. Now we continually audit and iterate to find other loopholes in places to make it better. This is where the trackpad speed comes into play.
Yeah, that's a late stage. So for anybody listening, if your company's in shambles, turning up trackpad speed is probably not
the first place to look. Yeah, exactly.
But at some point, right, like you chip away at the biggest problems, and then you find smaller and smaller problems.
Exactly.
You'll never solve your last problem, but you'll you'll get better and better. I want to clarify on one thing here, like as for like how does this, I don't know, you could call it like this flywheel of operations or whatever the case. Like, how does this work? Like, what is this continual improvement process? And I think there's kind of two things that I understand. And you tell me if you see anything else or if I understand this wrong. Number one is auditing.
Right.
We do a lot of auditing, right? That's how you find problems. You audit any part of your business, you find money in that part of the business. It's like almost universal, right? Like audits we've done recently, we found out we are using our resources to fulfill SEO for clients that don't want to do SEO anymore. Right?
We have found that.
Okay, well, there's some money, right? Because we're spending all our time building links for people that aren't paying for them. Whoa, if you do stuff for people that don't pay for it, then you don't make money.
Yeah.
What a crazy idea, right? But we have processes, and then those processes break sometimes,
right.
and we have to fix those things, right? And if you don't have those audits, you don't find that.
Very true.
And then the other thing that we have that I think is like one of my favorite things we've implemented is an issue tracker. How that works is if anybody in the company finds something that didn't work the way it was supposed to, then they submit a form. That form goes into a project management system where we're kind of digging into why did that not work as it was supposed to. And there's all kinds of reasons, like the process was good, this person just didn't do their job right. Or maybe we found a loophole in the system so it doesn't work properly, or we have a failed automation or something like that.
Right.
And then we start to see the commonalities between those things and dig into it. And that kind of gives us like, it tells us, because we have like simple reporting that's not just emotional around what problems we're having in the business, we can see like this problem happened this many times, and this was the cause of that, et cetera. And that's something that I've really valued for us continually improving those operations is that we're looking at them and digging into problems as they show up instead of just like freaking out about them, throwing a Band-Aid on it and moving on, and then just having the same problems over and over and over again.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that's part of the, like you said, it's the iterative process, right? You put something in place, you don't ever stop auditing it. You're always looking for ways to make improvements. And like you mentioned, we have that issue tracker in place, which is essentially our general guide for what's going wrong or what's being missed in any part of the business, which makes it really easy to dive into really specific issues. But as you set up processes, it's really easy to, do one audit, make sure that we have documentation, it looks like it's being adopted and people are using it, and then never look at it again and think, okay, out of sight, out of mind, we're good. I'm just going to have faith that it's all happening right. And the reality is that maybe, somebody has gotten used to the process and they're like, okay, I don't even have to look at it. Well, if the process is being changed and the documentation is being updated and somebody has the process memorized and they're not leaning on the documentation or on the steps that need to be done and they're just going off of memory, then that's where you're going to find holes in the process. And so continually auditing is massively important.
Yeah, totally agreed. It reminds me of something that Sharper taught us this week. We had Austin McCurdy, who's been on the podcast, come out from Sharper Business Solutions. He helped run our quarterly meetings, and he showed us this process of delegation. And it was insightful for me because I realized exactly what I don't do that I should to make it work. As I remember at the stages, it was basically, he called it like a cycle, right? Like you go through these 4 things and then you go through them again and then you go through them again. The first one was instruct, right? And I think I generally do that, right? Where I say like, hey, Brady, this is how you do this. Right. The next step is give feedback. That's where I think most people drop the ball. Right. Because you do it, and then and then I just assume that I told you how to do it and you must be fine. You must know how to do it.
Right.
And then you mess it up and I'm like, what's wrong with you, Brady? You're not doing
Exactly.
it right. Instead of this like understanding that like, I want to see this happen successfully. I want to understand that it works first. And then after that, give autonomy. Too often, because we don't get the feedback right, then we, we're not fully willing to give autonomy to that person because we don't trust that person anymore. And then the last part is give a budget. That's especially if you're delegating on like a higher level.
Right.
And maybe I'm not saying, please optimize this marketing channel in this way. I'm just saying, here's your marketing budget. Please get us the best leads you can.
Yep,
right.
definitely.
There's a difference. Any comments on that or any thoughts?
Oh yeah. I mean, like you said, oftentimes what happens is we have the documentation in place, we have the training in place, and we just say, go run with it. And we don't get that feedback. We don't kind of close that loop of understanding. And so when it comes down to, I mean, we've given them full autonomy, like you mentioned, and it's not happening. And then we feel a lack of trust when in reality, we dropped the ball on our side of making sure that that understanding was, fully grasped. And now we can step away. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of making sure that there's that feedback loop before stepping away, which is where things often go wrong. And it's really easy to slip up there. So, yeah, I loved that that diagram that was given to us.
You know what the real reason I don't do that most of the time is? I wait too long to delegate. Like I wait to delegate something until I don't have any time.
Yeah.
And then I don't have time to give like the feedback and like slowly move towards autonomy. So I go straight to autonomy. And then I lose trust, et cetera. So it's something to think about, like when do you delegate things and making sure you do it at the right time. That makes sense.
Yeah, no question. And I think that comes back to vision, right? Where are we at in terms of, our vision for moving forward? If you don't have a clear vision of where you're headed, then especially as a business owner, you probably have way too many things on your plate that could easily be delegated and moved on so that you can push for that vision. And so having that vision and clarity of where you're moving is essential in knowing at what point you should start to kind of move things off your plate. And so like, let's say, you have a team of 5 people and you're doing something that could easily be trained, but your mindset is, oh, my team is at max capacity, I have to do it. You're probably being a bottleneck. And what I think really needs to happen is there something that could be shifted off my team to somebody else? Do we need to hire somebody else? Because this isn't the highest leverage activity that I could be doing right now. And valuing your own time, I think, is really important as to understanding when to delegate. Because if you're doing those things that are really simple or could be trained or not worth what your time is worth, then it needs to be taken off your plate for sure. And you need to go through that cycle of training, giving feedback, giving autonomy, and budget.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about my most like the thing that feels the most frustrating about operations that I've dealt with when I like try to make like a good effort and how you fixed some of that. So what I thought operations was record your screen doing it once, send that person the video. Okay, now it's recorded. We have a training.
Yeah.
You find in the long term, it doesn't seem to work. Like suddenly people aren't using that anymore. How do we update it? Nobody knows where to find it, et cetera. Right. How have we solved that problem? And how do you think most business owners can do a step above when it comes to operations, or maybe not business owners, maybe operations people, right? But like, how do you transfer something as simple as like, here's a video showing how to do this process into like actual quality documentation for a company that gets used, gets adjusted, gets improved over time?
Yeah, that's a great point. So something that we have in place is called a company wiki. Essentially, it's all of the information that you need to know, regardless of which department you're in. So we have all of our trainings and processes all in one place where you can easily access and reference. And so anytime you record a new video or a new process of what's going on, you should always make sure that it gets added to the wiki. Essentially, it's like a Google Doc of processes. We use a software called Notion, which is just easier to organize, but it's having a place where you can store that video, where you can write a step-by-step guide, and where if things change, you can update it there. And then you need reinforcement, right? You need to make sure the team has been trained on that. Sending or recording a video is not training in and of itself. You need to make sure that there's that feedback loop. So making sure that you have that team meeting to get everybody on board, make sure that everybody's aware, or have a communication channel where you facilitate that. And then anytime there's an update to the process, you got to make sure that everybody on the team is in the loop. You can't just tell one person and expect them to, train the team unless you've delegated that to them and they understand that that's their responsibility. But it needs to be communicated to the whole team and then updated in all the different places as well.
Yeah. And I would add one last thing. I've had multiple conversations with people over the past week where they come to me with a problem. They say, I don't know how to fix this problem. And I actually have to tell them, like, okay, let's pull up the company wiki.
Yes.
Pull it up. Where do you think you might find information about this? Right? And take them through it. And you realize you can solve your own problem. We've already written a guide on exactly on how to solve this problem. And people forget that they're there. But the problem is, as a manager, you always want to give them the answer.
Sure.
Because you feel like that's your job. But you don't teach them to find the answer. And if you have like good enough updated documented processes, like I think this starts to fail when like you don't have good enough processes,
For sure.
or the manager doesn't trust that they're up to date, or whatever the case is. But it really creates like a lot of self-reliance. It allows, one of our core values is ownership. Right. And it allows people to like own what they do, that they don't have to depend on somebody else to do their job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's think back to the efficiency example, right? Because we had our processes documented, we could hone in specifically to trackpad speed and shortcuts on the computer. But if you don't have your process documented well and you don't have people referring back to that, then you're wasting so much time essentially training and retraining every time somebody has a question. So you need to create an environment of, this is your resource. Step one, you always check here. Don't ever talk to anybody else unless you have done this. And that's something that falls through the cracks so easily. And as a manager, it's hard to be the bad guy of like, did you check? Did you check? And you almost sound like a broken record, but you really need to do that until it becomes part of the culture. And so making that an instinct of looking here first before asking somebody else is really important. And then another point to that is, I've looked here. Okay, it's not anywhere. It's not documented. Now I'm going to go ask for help. Now that I have my answer, don't just take that answer and use it for that one-off task and then call it good. Add it to your documentation, because if you've had that question, somebody else is going to have that question as well. So making sure that it's a living document that gets updated very frequently is really important.
Yeah, and this all sounds like, when I think of the vacuum of just like building the operations of the company, this all sounds easy, right? What it feels like running a small company sometimes is like you're like building this rocket, but at the same time, like the rocket's like taking off in the launch pad, and now you're accelerating and you're going like 1,000 miles an hour, and you're like, shoot, we forgot the fin. Somebody put the fin on, and like it's like it's hard, right? It's because you're moving, right? We're making progress and we're moving forward as a company.
Definitely.
How do you know what's most important to focus on at any given time, and how do you make these like high speed changes without just like making your rocket blow up in the air and never actually get where you're trying to go?
Yeah, great questions. So focusing on the most important tasks, let's start there. That's a tough one. It really is tough. You need to know for your business what is most essential for it to be moving forward, right? And so that's step one. And so urgency is really important, understanding what's most urgent, what's least urgent. Can we do a Band-Aid fix right now for a few days while we're fixing this other thing that's more urgent? And the priority list for the Band-Aid fix is low, where this one is high. And so there's always a balancing act of, okay, what is going to affect our clients right now? Focusing on that versus what is going to affect our clients maybe more in the long run and less in the short term. And so it is difficult for sure. And it's a constant balancing act. But a priority of urgency and importance is definitely needed. And then the other part is, how do we keep this thing moving while we're constantly growing and changing and developing? And it's all making sure that your team is in sync. And to do that, you need to have really clear communication channels. You need to have a place where they can all go and reference, and you need to make sure that everybody knows when changes are made, and you have a really clear way of implementing those and getting really fast feedback. That's another thing. When you're setting up operations and new systems and processes, things will fail. Nothing's going to be perfect. I wish it were the case. Life would be so much less
I'm
stressful.
always disappointed. Sometimes I even tell you, like, Brady, I know you're going to change this and it's going to break. Could we just skip the break part?
Yeah,
and could
for
you just
sure.
like predict how that's going to happen? And let's just go straight to the point where it works really well.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was possible, and you can mitigate risk and do your best at that. But the reality is putting something in place and failing fast is usually the best way to get really good feedback, patch up the holes, and then move forward. And so, mitigate as much of it as you can, but don't spend all your time trying to mitigate, the failures. Put something in place, roll with it, and be ready to dive in and fix those things fast.
That's the key.
That's the
right?
key.
You don't let it fester for like
Exactly.
6 months and create all these problems.
Yes.
And just forget that you implemented that process.
Correct. Yeah. Essentially, anytime anything new that's big affects more than one team, or a large change to a team, you need to put it in place and then know that the next 2 days are going to be fixing that thing, or the next week is going to be fixing the things that are breaking. And you need to have time dedicated for that, and just know, okay, this next week is we're doing tons of iteration to close all the gaps and make sure that this is a viable option long term.
Yep. Love it. If it's okay with you, let's do a software speed round. One of your favorite softwares, favorite tools, things you've learned. Task management.
Task management. We currently use Monday. Monday's awesome. Notion is another one. It has task management, not as good as Monday, but really good because it's more robust for things like creating wikis as well.
Got it. What about, so for company wikis, would you say Notion or anything else that somebody should consider?
I would definitely say Notion. I mean, you can do it in Google Sheets, but Notion is super easy to use. You can add links, videos, images, screenshots, all sorts of stuff. So I would highly recommend Notion. And then paired with that, there's a software called Tango. I mean, there's tons of software like this, but Tango's one of them, where you hit play, it records your screen, you go through a process, you're recording a video at the same time. So they have a video. Once you finish, they have a Tango, which just has a step-by-step guide, and then you add it to Notion. So you have step-by-step guide, you have the video, and then Notion, which goes into more depth. So I would say that and Loom is the video software that we use. So that was kind of a long answer, but
well, let me dive into this. Yeah. So to make it clear what Tango does here, so you're recording the video, but then the AI within Tango is actually taking your video, understanding what it's saying, and then putting it into step-by-step, like step 1, 2, 3, 4 instructions, all of which have a screenshot showing what it does and explains what to do.
Yeah, so let's break it down. So Tango has a step-by-step guide. Every time you click on the screen, it takes a screenshot, and the AI will title it whatever it assumes that step is. So once you finish, there's a little bit of editing, but essentially you can just copy and paste into your wiki, and it'll have the full guide on what needs to be done.
Which is so cool.
It's amazing.
Because the videos, what I see is they don't get used after the first few times because nobody wants to watch the whole video again.
Yeah.
Right.
No
so that's where it's important to have like the video, because then you can see everything. You can hear how it's explained. That's good. But this step-by-step of like, this is how you do it, this is where you click, is a great like quick reference.
Correct.
And you'll notice if something changes.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah. And then, so in addition to Tango, we also use Loom, which is a video recording software. It records your screen. You can add your face on it as well. But essentially, it's a really easy way to show the full process in depth, like you're saying, which needs to be done at first, so that if you've never done this new process, you get the whole thing A to Z. Somebody's walking you through it, and you have a really clear understanding at the end. And Loom's cool because you can have your team on it. You can add comments and all sorts of stuff. So it can become sort of a living document as well.
Yeah. What if somebody's saying, well, I have Google Docs, why would I use Notion instead?
Notion allows you to format things a lot better. You can have task management within that. You can do pages within pages. Whereas if you're doing a Google Doc, it's just like one big long sheet, and maybe you have a table of contents at the top. Notion it's almost like a drag and drop website, but so easy. You hit backslash, and you can add any piece of content you want, image, video, and embedded whatever. And so it's just so much easier to manage, and it becomes much more clear for employees to be able to navigate and know exactly where to go, how to get there, and have everybody on board in one system, rather than, hey, can you send me the link to that one Google Doc about that one thing? it contains all of it in one.
Yeah, I almost think of it like the comparison for a lot of people between like, let's just say typing on a computer and like taking notes on a notepad. They feel more free with the notepad, like more creativity, more ability to do whatever you want. That's like Google Docs versus Notion. Like it's just,
Definitely.
it's more robust. Like I feel like I could do more with Notion than I can with a pad of paper, basically.
Oh, by far. Yeah.
Which is so cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. All right. CRM.
We use HubSpot. HubSpot is super robust. It's awesome for automating tasks, emails, all sorts of stuff. And it gets really powerful when you start to build out automations within it as well. So we use HubSpot. There's a ton on the market. But if you're focusing on having a really robust software that kind of does it all, HubSpot's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and popular ones for our clients are Salesforce, which arguably I think a lot of people would say is more robust than HubSpot.
It is.
But also expensive and clunky.
And a lot more difficult to use.
Yes.
Yeah, so you kind of have to code your own system if you're using Salesforce, whereas HubSpot does most of it for you. It's kind of a drag and click kind of thing.
Yes, and then we have the famous Podio.
That's
which
right.
seems like, I honestly, I don't know that I've ever talked to somebody that's like, I love Podio.
Sure.
It's more like, I'm stuck in Podio because I spent years trying to make it do what I want it to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was a pretty robust solution years ago, but I think there's some better options now. So some people are kind of like still in it because of that. And then there's more simple CRMs like RE Simply, Follow Up Boss. I'm referencing these things for for investors listening to this.
Sure.
I think one thing to dive into last that would be interesting is our relationship.
Sure.
How does this work? We are trying to be obedient basically to what Sharper is telling us to do.
That's right.
And honestly, I've seen the benefits of this in my business already, so I want to share this with as many people as I can.
Let's do it.
So it's this all originates from a book called Traction. And Traction talks about the role of a visionary and of an integrator. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, definitely. So essentially what Traction and the EOS system is what it's called, talks about is, a visionary, which is they're looking to the end. They're trying to figure out what's the end goal, where are we headed, what's that marker way off in the distance that we need to get to. And if you think of, your whole company as a ship, right? The visionary is they're the one who's got the what do you call it? The keel, I don't know the name of it. The rudder, there it is.
Oh,
They've got the rudder, they're guiding the ship. And then you have a team of people that need to also be involved to make it all happen, right? So you have the visionary who's like, let's go there. And then the integrator essentially is, okay, how do we do everything that we need to get there, to facilitate that long-term vision? And so that's, managing the different teams, holding people accountable, making sure that the systems and the processes and the procedures are all in place so that everybody knows their role within that ship, they know what they're doing, and they can move forward as one single entity. And if your company is set up and you don't have this vision integrator dichotomy, then usually what you have is a founder who kind of does a little bit of everything and makes it harder for each person to be within their individual role, which is where they perform best. So that's the major benefit of this visionary integrator relationship. It's making sure that everybody's in the right seat and being leveraged to their full potential so that the visionary can focus on, okay, we're moving the mark, we're pushing for more, we're striving for, something bigger or further or more growth. And then the visionary helps to facilitate that. Or sorry, the integrator helps to facilitate that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are naturally visionaries.
Right.
It's less common that they're naturally integrators.
Right.
I can kind of go either way. And this was like I had read this book years ago, actually. This is something that Austin from Sharper kind of pounded into my head. He's like, you gotta understand this because it's important. I thought, well, I'm kind of a person that could go either way.
Sure.
I can, like, compared to most like company visionaries, I'm like more detailed. I understand processes more. I understand their need. I don't hate all the I don't hate how we get there as much as some people. Some people are like, I just care that we get there. I don't want anything to do with anything else.
Right.
Right. And I'm like very much like I can play both sides. But he said you can't have one person in both roles. Right. They're separate jobs. Just because you physically are capable of both those jobs doesn't mean that you can do those jobs at the same time. And it's really important to separate them out. So some things that I had to change. Our organizational structure. Do you want to talk about that, like how the accountability chart works?
Yeah, definitely. So the way that it was set up previously to having Sharper come in and help us with this whole process was that everybody reported, or all the department heads reported to you. So I specifically was working in operations. We had, head of marketing, product, sales, account management, fulfillment, all reported to you. And there wasn't, because it was set up that way, I mean, your time was being drawn into, a lot of conversations and fixing things and more in the weeds than a visionary technically should be, right? And you weren't able to focus, as much as you needed to on that long-term vision because you were kind of being pulled into the weeds of things. And so the way that we shifted it is you're the visionary, I'm the integrator, and then I now work with the department heads. So you push for this long-term vision, and then I help make sure that all of the departments are working in sync with our systems and processes so that we can move as a whole in that direction, rather than you being dragged down into the weeds on all these different things. And one of the things that the traction, the book talks about is letting go of the vine, which is this scary concept of not being in the weeds on all of these different things, letting autonomy happen for the people who are owning these different things, and just focusing on that long-term vision, which is, I think, definitely a hard thing to do, especially when, as a founder or an owner, you've already done all the things. You're the one who's built the company to this point, and it's really scary. It's like stepping into the darkness, I'm sure. And so I think that's probably the hardest part, looking as an outsider, as somebody who's you've built this whole company on your own, and now you're like, okay, I'm letting go of the reins and I'm pushing for this vision, and now I'm the one in charge, and I'm my ownership is making sure that all of those things that you used to be in charge of happen. And so it's my neck on the block now instead of yours, and you can lean on me and make sure that I'm the one that's implementing all these things and holding people accountable and all of that.
I think it's also important to recognize that it goes both ways, right? So so basically, to like make it extremely clear what we did, I have one direct report, right? Even my assistant does not directly report to me. She
Correct.
reports to you, which is like the weirdest thing to me. But it's because I'm supposed to only have one direct report, and that's you.
Right.
So what that does is it makes you the filter for things going to me. So less things get to me, which allows me to keep my head more clear, focus on what's important. But there's also the other dynamic of that, which means that you are the filter for me,
right,
to the rest of the team.
Right.
Because what I did not realize was how often I prevent people from doing their jobs right because of my visionary tendencies. Things like, hey, here's this new idea. We should try doing this way.
Right.
I don't like the way you did that. And where every time I do those things and I keep on like trying to communicate with the team, I think I'm making progress. But what we don't realize is that I have so much feedback, and so many ideas that all those things, if pushed to the team, create this like company-wide culture of shiny object syndrome.
Yes, no question.
That is just not okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because then nothing gets done,
Yep.
right? So then I'm looking at like, well, I had this cool idea 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And what people are doing is they're just working on like the most recent idea, not the most important idea.
Exactly.
And they're two different things.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, that part has been really interesting, and I've loved the change because of that. You're the owner of the company, right? You're the CEO. You're the one pushing this whole direction. And so you're like, I got this awesome idea. Let's do this. It's going to be amazing. Let's roll it out. Let's go. And you're doing that, 10 times a week or more. And so it gets really difficult to, okay, well, where's the focus? Like, what should we be working towards? Because we just got like 20 new ideas and they all sound awesome and we want to move forward on all of them, but what are we actually supposed to do? How do we move forward? It's way too much. We can't implement it all right now. And so, like you're mentioning, the dynamic of how our relationship works is, okay, now you dump all of the ideas to me and we talk through them and we say, okay, this one, let's focus on this quarter. The rest we're going to put on the back burner for now. Or, yeah, this one's an immediate thing. Let's do it now. This one's going to be a focus for this quarter. This one, I'm going to have this team work on it. The rest, we're just going to hold on to for now and we'll revisit them. And it makes it so that it's not, the team isn't inundated with a ton of new ideas and feeling like they're just drowning, but there's a lot more focus now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed it, and I think it's benefited us. I think we have a better service quality than we have before. I think we're performing better from like a marketing and sales standpoint, and it's fantastic to see all that kind of come closed loop and realize I can actually do more by doing less. The last final distinction to make, just because I think it might resonate with some people who maybe are in a similar situation to what I was in. There's kind of two really opposing pieces of the company that are really important, both of them. Number one is growth. Number two is efficiency. And this is kind of true for anything, right? Like if we're talking marketing, which is so often the topic of this podcast, right? Like what is growth? It's volume. It's like how many deals can you get from a marketing channel? What's efficiency? It's cost. How much does it cost for you to get those, right? And often those are at odds, right? We hear this concept of diminishing marginal returns, right? You're going to, if you want to push your volume really high, then you're going to have to push your efficiency low, or vice versa, right? So you have to understand what's most important to you. And I think it's just really, really hard for somebody to be in both a growth and efficiency mindset at the same time.
Question.
So I'm a naturally growth-minded person, right? I'm always thinking, how do we grow this? But I also don't want to go bankrupt.
Yeah, no questions.
So I'm thinking all along the way, well, how do we make this efficient, right? Okay, I want to hire 10 salespeople so we can sell tons of stuff. Can we afford to hire 10 salespeople so we can sell tons of stuff? Something that was so insightful to me is that the visionary is responsible for growth. The integrator is responsible for efficiency. So you're ultimately held accountable to a margin for the company.
Correct.
And I ultimately am trying to figure out how to grow the company as much as possible. Any comments on that? Like for me, it's been super freeing to be able to think about like the stuff that naturally aligns with the way that I think and how I want to grow the company, while being able to delegate the details and not just feel like before, what it felt like was every conversation I had with somebody was somebody trying to take money away from me somehow. Like, I need budget for this. I need to hire this person, et cetera. And to be freed from that and have somebody making those decisions in a better, less emotional way, I think is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. There's a few things that go into this. I think one of the big things is making sure that you have really clear data and reporting and numbers to go off of. That's like foundational level, right? That's needed to make sure that you can make smart business decisions. And
if I could comment, for every company that has numbers, there's like 0.1 companies that have clear numbers that you can make decisions based on. It's like it takes, like if you were looking at, let's just say a marathon is getting to that point.
Right.
The point where you have numbers that you think are good is like 1 mile into your marathon.
Sure.
And you have a long, long way to go.
Yes. Yeah. It's really difficult to pull everything together and have really clear insights as to where are we now and how can we make smart decisions now to achieve the growth that we're looking for, but also maintain those margins. And so, foundational level, you have to have really good insights. And that alone is a huge hurdle and difficult to get through for sure. But that's essential. And so, once you have that in place, then it's just a matter of, okay, we're growing. We want to push more. Where can we move around budget or what kind of decision needs to take place to facilitate that growth, right? And you have all of your ideas coming towards me, and I'm like, okay, cool. So we have these like 10 growth ideas right now. What's going to be the best one that we can put into place now that will achieve our long-term goals and also help or continue to maintain, the margins that we're looking for? And so I agree that it's a lot easier having you focused on growth, and then I'm the one who's held accountable to our margin, and I have all the data to go off of to be able to make a really good decision and make sure that, it's the right one that helps to get the growth that we're looking for and maintain all of that. So, it's really important to have all those things in place.
Yeah, totally agreed. Thank you so much for your time, Brady. It's been awesome to speak with you today. For everybody listening, thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.